Hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to join, Laura. I'm Asha Easton from Immerse UK. And Immerse UK is the UK's VR and AR professional network in the country. So we work in partnership with the government basically to grow, and all of our stakeholders, which there are many, to help to grow the immersive tech ecosystem in the country and to help UK immersive tech businesses to scale and become leaders in the space. I'm joined today by Farooq, Yaqub. I think he's supposed to be, there he is. Farooq is the innovation engineer and XR lead at Ford. And I'm just going to give him a minute to just give you an idea of what he does in that role at Ford.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm working at Ford Motor Company, as Asha mentioned, and I'm actively involved in leading the development of XR tools in Europe. So I influence the development of global solutions, focusing on return on investment opportunities with the Factory of Future and Industry 4 at Ford Motor Company. So my background's in product development, so 3D and user-centered design, experience in the manufacturing and engineering sector, focused on process improvement, new technology and strategy, a chartered member of the Institute of Engineering and Technology, and a STEM ambassador. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. I'll go to you.
Just a couple of things that he does. It's impressive. Okay, Farooq, so let's just dive right in. We only have a short amount of time. So first of all, the first question is a bit broad, just how are immersive technologies currently being used by industry in the UK? And then more specifically, how are you specifically using immersive tech in your work at Ford?
Yeah, sure. I mean, in terms of industry in the UK, obviously there's a vast array of companies and sectors using these tools. So the use cases will differ really widely. So I guess it's probably easier for me to talk about what I'm doing in my sector. So effectively, connectivity and how information flows is an important piece of the Factory of the Future puzzle. 5G being one of the hot topics, not only in building products, but across industries. This is a great junction for early adopters to make tangible gains in a competing, non-competitive environment. By that, what I mean is effectively various other industries are competing to be the best at what they do, but across sectors, they're not necessarily competing and they can learn from each other. So 5GEM is one of the UK 5G accelerator projects linked to the Digital Catapult. Other talks may have mentioned this, especially Digital Catapult 5G maybe. So this particular project within the 5G accelerator programs is based in Dunton. So that's the Ford's UK R&D centre based in Essex, among a couple of other sites. It's overlaid on an e-motor and battery cell assembly facility, looking at future factory Industry 4 activities. We have an immersive technology element linking machines, data, algorithms, human interaction to enhance collaboration and guidance across sites, utilizing more information than was previously available. So in terms of new opportunities, the landscape of powertrain manufacturing, which is the core business in which I'm involved in, has changed somewhat recently with a large focus on electrification due to legislation and trends. With this shift, it's created opportunities in manual interactions with activities that weren't previously viable.
Okay.
So large.
Like what wasn't viable before?
So for example, Ford Motor Company, as majority of people know, is a mass manufacturer. Mm-hmm. So it's economies of scale. So we produce really large volumes. Previously, producing small volumes, it wasn't cost effective. But now that electrification is taking a key role in the future of the business, combustion engine business is effectively still going to be there, but it's going to be vastly reduced. And in that presents an opportunity to have more manual processes, so lower volume production.
That's very interesting.
So as part of that, you can, inherently the benefits of immersive technology you can overlay additional information on manual interactions to enhance those processes or create better quality. So stepping on from that, integrating AI and machine learning.
Yeah. Sorry, and do you mean just curious? Do you mean then? So you're using the immersive tech in the design process?
So if you think about it as the methodology in which to release a product, you have all the way from strategy through to design, and then implementation, and then release, and then there's a cycle that goes. I'm doing this, but there's a cycle. There's a cycle, and it can be used in all areas, but with different use cases. Gotcha. So, for example, in the engineering, upfront engineering, when you don't have physical products available, that lends itself more towards virtual reality, because you can have an artificial environment created for you, and you can go and assess things. Whereas as you move on into having physical products available, so for example, in a factory floor, you have some equipment available to you, you have some product available to you, and you're processing it to add value to it. You have some physical products available. What you can do with mixed reality is you can overlay some digital content that could potentially be a prototype at that point in time. And you may not have access to it, or you may not have easy access to it. So it may be extortionate to be able to produce a one-off piece when you can use digital content to be overlaid onto some of the physical content you already have.
Sure. And so what you said, do you use both of those things then, VR hardware and MR hardware then in these two processes? And what do you use out of curiosity?
Both. So
which headsets?
Yeah, okay. So the headsets we use at Ford, they're not necessarily all-encompassing on the market, but effectively what we use for virtual reality is the HTC Vive Pro. And then for mixed reality, we have the HoloLens 2, and we also use the RealWear headset, which is an assisted reality version. So it's not necessarily the same as the HoloLens. It has a different emphasis. You're able to see someone's viewpoint, but you're not able to overlay CAD models onto a physical environment.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
And just like going back to everything you're saying about 5G, and you're about to talk about AI as well. How does the combination of immersive with these technologies like drive the value of immersive?
Yeah. So 5G with immersive, what it does for us is enables a total system. So if you imagine a manufacturing system, you have multiple machines, you have multiple things going on in one environment. 5G enables you to connect various different devices, different sensors. So I mean, this is a rabbit hole type discussion, but
we love those.
Yeah. So effectively, if you think of digital twins, it can be construed in various ways. There are a lot of people understand it in different ways, but you're effectively mirroring what is physically available in the digital world and being able to interact with it. So once you interact with that environment, so for example, if you have a machine and you have a conveyor system, and I put my hand in the way of a product going to another operation, then I can understand what that impact is to the system. So the digital twin enables me to do that. In order to do that, you have a vast amount of sensors and all of these periphery equipment. So extended reality being part of that periphery equipment. If you can have all of those pieces of equipment joined up together and talking to each other and understanding the impact from one to the next, then that's a really powerful thing to do. So for example, if there's something going on the line and you can have something sent to your mixed reality device, if you have one, if you're using one. And then you can effectively target improvement actions in a faster manner. Similarly, with artificial intelligence, having algorithms that enable you to make decisions better is something which is really valuable in the manufacturing sector, and I'm assuming across industry as well.
Yeah, and I want to talk a bit more about the pilot you have going on in Dunton, right? Which is the 5Gen project.
Yep.
And you mentioned just everyone also, I want to flag as well that UK 5G is another innovation network that is kind of a sister network to Immerse UK that focuses on that's technology. And also we are also a sister organization to Digital Catapult as well, who I know you said are part of that project. And so what does the funding look like from that, and what is it going towards? What innovation is it helping you with?
Okay, so the 5Gen project in particular is laser welding. So we have laser welding applications, and this is a key process in the electrification manufacture. So we have stator. So a stator is part of an electric motor, and then we also have the battery tabs, which form a battery module. So these are two key elements to powertrain environment for electric vehicles. So these two operations, what we're trying to do here is link our operations to a sister site in TWI, which is the Welding Institute. Okay. In order to gain real-time or close to real-time support from some experts in that field. And what we're doing with the extended reality portion of it is we're overlaying some of those learnings onto operators.
Okay, interesting. And so I want to talk a little bit about this is a massive project, right? How much is the funding for this project?
I'm not 100% sure, but it's a consortium project, so it's various funding pots. For different partners. There's, I believe, 5 or maybe, actually, I shouldn't say a number, but there's a website. You can go to the website and you can see how many partners are involved. But there's a number of partners, and they all have different strengths that bring the UK industry together to accelerate the adoption of 5G technology.
Yeah, it's public knowledge, by the way. So exactly, it's okay. But if you guys want to find out, you can go and find out how much this public funding is going. But you know, this is it's a big overhaul. It's a big pilot. You know, how would you suggest maybe smaller manufacturers develop immersive use cases in their companies?
Immersive use cases. Okay. Yeah. I mean. So effectively, that will depend on the type of organization and what their aspirations are. So, for example, a lot of smaller organizations, what they tend to gravitate towards is remote assistance. Mm-hmm. So remote assistance is something which, in the current situation, a lot of people, they can't meet face-to-face, or it's heavily restricted. So it presents itself. It presents a massive benefit for people in this scenario where, for example, you need someone to help you troubleshoot. You can put on a headset and you can effectively walk through the process with them. So that's something in which smaller organizations gravitate towards. But if they are looking to do something else, or maybe more elaborate or creative, then effectively, at Ford, it's a for-profit organization, so it's heavily linked towards return on investment. So when you're replicating, or when you're trying to replace a particular process, so if you do something currently in the real world, then there's obviously a cost associated to it. Understanding what that cost is and understanding what impact can be made by replacing it with something else is really key to the adoption. And then moving on from that, it's about telling the story. So understanding exactly what you're looking to gain from using these devices, as opposed to just putting them on and seeing what happens. Understanding specifically what you want to gain from them is really key to developing those use cases.
Yeah, that's great advice. I also just want to let people know, if you have questions, please just drop them in the chat, and we will bring them in as and when we can. So another question I have for you, Farooq, is around current hardware trends and what this means for the future of immersive, and maybe what it might mean for what the work that you're doing at Ford. For example, I just received the new HP Omnicept from HP, which has built-in eye tracking and pupil sensing and face tracking, and also heart rate monitor, and a new software to enable you to visualize that data in a way that could be of value to businesses. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on where these kind of trends in hardware and all this biometric data collection, where that's going, and what value it can have for the kind of work that you do.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of people think that the software is the be-all and end-all of this type of activity, but the hardware does play a key role in providing you the raw ingredients to be able to manipulate. So, for example, what you just mentioned about having biometric data, that's something which can be used in order to more effectively make decisions. So if you understand what variables are impacting a particular process, then you can more effectively challenge that process or look at ways in which you can improve it in a targeted manner. So those types of advancements are important to provide a greater insight into the variables that can impact a process.
And could that be something that you could use soon, like in one of the processes that you're already doing?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in terms of, I say for sure, there are some IT restrictions in terms of what headsets we can use.
Okay.
But it's effectively just some paperwork that needs to be filled out. Yeah, so it's not restrictive in terms of having a particular headset, but it's a number of hurdles you need to make if you're going to introduce a new headset into the Ford environment. But yeah,
that's very interesting. I love hearing people's pain points. Actually, that's really interesting. Why is it that it's difficult to bring in a new headset?
I say difficult. It's just there is a process that you need to follow. So, for example, there are some headsets which require you to share information with a particular server, whereas if it's information that is potentially sensitive, that's not going to be acceptable within a business environment. So, for example, if you're going to use an Oculus Quest, you need to log into a Facebook account. So there are some challenges inherently with sharing data with particular entities. So there needs to be agreements with the respective providers that host that information before it can be used in a more sensitive environment, let's say.
Oh, that's really interesting. So can we talk more about like that as a barrier to entry for other manufacturers potentially then?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of barrier to entry, it's very different for different scales of businesses. So, for example, if you were a smaller organization and you weren't concerned about competitive advantage, then you may not be worried about sharing information on host platforms that you don't have particular agreements with. So, for example, there's a consumer agreement with the Quest, let's say. So you understand what you're signing up to when you're logging into a headset. Whereas with a larger organization that potentially has some secret information, let's say, that impacts people's livelihoods, it can be a challenge in terms of signing off the relevant agreements as to who can access that data.
And just on advancements in hardware, you mentioned a talk that you saw yesterday between Ultraleap and Varia. Do you want to talk about what that new advancement in that headset? And then I have a question about why.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was quite interesting actually. I've seen Ultraleap previously, and also I believe they are within your organization or your tree of I don't know.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
we had an investment report that we co-authored with ViveX that just came out last week, and it was talking about VC investment into the immersive tech space in the last year or so. And Ultraleap was one of our featured companies who've received significant investment into their business.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, what I found interesting about it was effectively in manufacturing environment or in a product creation environment, having access to your hands instead of controllers. So being able to navigate with your hands as opposed to using controllers is something which enhances the user's experience. So if you were to pick up a part on an assembly line, if you were doing this digitally and you were selecting it with a controller, it doesn't give you an appreciation for what that part actually feels like to move around. So you don't understand some of those pain points that could be associated with handling that part. So having hand tracking available as the controllers for a headset is actually quite interesting. There are other methods that I've seen before. So there's a particular, I don't know, there's a strip on a headset. I can't remember what it was called, but it was something effectively, you know, where you have a keyboard and it's a thing.
Yeah. So Leap Motion, because that used to.
That's it, Leap Motion.
Well, Leap Motion and Ultraleap, they're combined.
Okay.
Part of they merged.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. That's really interesting. So another thing that I saw, I had a really interesting chat yesterday with a company called Audio Scenic, which is a Southampton-based startup, and they are doing spatial audio, and they're trying to enable binaural sound without the use of headphones. So effectively, it'll be like a speaker bar that kind of like direct target shoots the sound directly to your ears. You can have like that spatial experience without having to put headphones on. Would there be any implications for something like that in a manufacturing environment for an immersive?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of sound, in a safety setting, let's say, when you're going through a training environment, we also have forklifts operating in our facilities. We have AGVs. We have a bunch of hazards or potential hazards that operators can face. So when they go through a training regime, this could be something that enhances their experience. So because obviously it's a human sense, isn't it? It's something that can trigger you to do something. So for example, if you're walking across the road and you haven't seen something coming, but you can hear it coming, it's another sense to protect you. So if in a training environment, you can have access to some sound, as a prompt for a warning, you could potentially understand when you're in a real environment, oh, that's what a forklift sounds like. That's what a forklift sounds like when it's approaching me. So yeah, definitely, it's another variable which could provide some enhanced experience.
Yeah. It's really interesting to see how all of these things are coming together, and I'm really interested in particular about more ways to drive adoption in manufacturing, because we're working with the Immerse UK. By the way, I probably should mention this before, we are part of KTN, which is an organization that helps to facilitate cross-sector innovation in the UK, working in partnership with Innovate UK and many other stakeholders. But there is an in-house manufacturing team that is helping to do delivery on a program called Manufacturing Made Smarter. Have you heard of it, Farooq?
Yeah, definitely. So Manufacturing Made Smarter, I believe it's the government fund that's Digital Catapult also has access to that, right?
Yeah, and many people are doing stuff on it. But KTN is doing a big piece of delivery work around it, and there have been 5 different technologies identified that they're trying to help manufacturers to adopt essentially. And Immersive is one of them. And I'm curious actually, like how you think, like, especially since you have a government funded project, and I know it's like 5G related, but it has an immersive component, which is very, very interesting. But how do you think government funding could be used more effectively to drive Industry 4.0 and cross-sector XR adoption?
More effectively?
Yeah. You think there's...
So I guess with Ford in particular, we were actually going to have a look at this manufacturing made smarter with the digital passport, but it didn't go as planned because of resource requirements. So at Ford, we have a particular resource model where we'd have to provide a number of resource to sustain a project of a nature like manufacturing made smarter. At the time, we didn't have that resource available. So that's another pain point that could be associated with why certain companies go forward with things and certain companies don't. But in terms of being more accessible, it's about targeting more specifically what impacts business. And sometimes the business doesn't know what impacts them. So it's about understanding or having someone that understands what is going to impact them with that particular technology. So I think that element there is kind of a cross between someone who understands the funding available and what the requirements are, but also understands what the business requirements are and how that particular technology can impact the business. So effectively, someone who can understand the return on investment.
Yeah. It's excellent.
And illustrate that.
That's great. And how would you, I mean, you kind of mentioned about how businesses could develop their own immersive use cases. Do you have any other advice on how they could get a pilot started in their business? Like, where would you start?
Okay, so where would I start? Effectively understanding the pain point. So we have, my particular position, I'm rather fortunate that I can interact with the facilities that make the products. What I can do is go and talk to the people and understand where the pain points are. And as part of this, I can identify areas in which I feel can be impacted by immersive technology. And I can build a return on investment business model out of what that particular pain point is. And what I would do initially is start very small by taking some equipment and potentially partner with someone to develop a particular solution for that pain point to then, because not everyone has bought into the idea of using immersive technology. So in order to get people to actually use it, providing a very specific and tangible use for it is quite important. So I'd say start small, but very targeted.
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice, actually. I just think it's really interesting that, as we're saying, like, you have to start somewhere. You have to start somewhere small. But as all of these technologies converge and combine, it's going to make it much easier to deliver and get these pilots off the ground. But it still, can be quite difficult to start. So just a bit of one other question I have about the pandemic, actually. I have to ask, has it changed how you use immersive tech at Ford, or has it accelerated adoption or hindered it in any way?
It accelerated it in a particular way. So at the time of the pandemic, I know that you're aware that Ford was involved in producing ventilators.
Yes.
And as part of that, I put in place an immersive way in which to communicate with other sites. and that was effectively using HoloLens 2 with remote assistance.
Which is amazing, by the way.
It gained a lot of popularity internally, and it accelerated the remote assistance use case. So remote assistance became dominant as opposed to some of the more creative side of things. So I was working on other things prior to that, but then that got sidelined because of the popularity of remote assistance and the need of it in the current circumstances. So although it has increased the awareness and adoption of immersive technology, it's increased it in a particular area.
Interesting.
So yeah,
and that's continued, and that's continued since the ventilator challenge.
Ford, as you know, is a global organization, and it's very large. So in order for a particular solution to then go across the organization and into various areas, it takes a considerable amount of time. So although it's still there, it's not necessarily only in one area. It's new to another area. It's new to a different area. So it's kind of growing, let's say.
So you were kind of the example of it working really effectively, and then it's started to move across the business, basically.
Yeah, so I mean, it was already on the radar for adoption, but effectively the ventilator work accelerated it exponentially. So effectively, it was already understood as an advantage to have this technology available. But when the ventilator project came along, it was no longer a discussion as to would it be useful or how would it be useful? How do we implement it? It was more a case of, we're doing it. Now we've got it done. Why can't everyone else do it at the same time? Yeah,
I love that.
Where a lot of people didn't really understand that there were some things that we did on the ventilator project that wasn't necessarily something you could do in everyday business.
Okay, it's interesting.
So for example, some of the hurdles that I mentioned a couple pain points previously, and there are hurdles in adopting various technologies. With the ventilator work, it was effectively, if you don't let me do this, then someone might die. So
puts a different spin on it.
So it was kind of, yeah, the emphasis was very different.
And I just want to highlight for anyone here who doesn't know what we're talking about with the ventilator challenge, perhaps we should have given a bit more background, but effectively at the beginning of the pandemic, the UK government put out a call to industry when they realized they might have a shortage of ventilators. We all know how crazy that time was. And there was a huge number of incredible partners that came together, including Ford and Farooq, who did an incredible job on this project to pull off manufacturing. I think, was it something like, it would have taken like 20 years or something to develop the number of ventilators that you are now able to produce in a matter of months. It was something crazy.
10 years in 10 weeks or something like that.
Yeah. People were saying it was like one of the greatest feats in UK manufacturing of all time. Actually, it was pretty incredible, and we did a whole talk on it. If you go to the resource section of the Immerse website, we did a panel discussion with some of the leaders of that project, because it was absolutely incredible. And so we only have a couple of minutes left. So Farooq, I want to give you just the final word on what you think the future of immersive adoption looks like in the UK.
Oh, in the UK, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think there's a lot of emphasis on collaboration, cross-industry collaboration with a lot of the work that you're involved in as well. So the way I see it is a lot of things will flourish at smaller levels, but then also grow into more collaborative platforms. And the way I would like to see it is a manufacturing environment. Again, this is another rabbit hole discussion, but
love it.
but yeah, having like an app environment where you have various apps from various suppliers, they can update them and interact with your manufacturing environment to make sure that your uptime is always at its peak. So the way I would like to see it is software being adopted in a more app-like environment. So not necessarily one software provider that encompasses everything, not like a monopoly environment, but maybe a lot of different providers that are very proficient in specific areas that are able to add value to various other types of software.
I like this concept. I'm gonna put you on the hot seat and say, hypothetically, how far away do you think we would be from this kind of opportunity environment?
I mean, I think what I just described there's a lot of political things involved in that. So so I'd say maybe 5 to 10 years.
Well, I hope that we could have another chat in 5 to 10 years, and that reality will be there, will be come true for you. So and your work. That's all we have time for today. I think we're coming to the end of our time, but thank you so much, Farooq. It was a really great chat. Always love hearing all the work that you're doing. You're doing incredible stuff at Ford. So thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, no problem. Great as always.